They called her special, with soft voices, tilted heads, like it was a compliment wrapped in velvet. They said she had potential. They said she was gifted. They said she just needed structure and patience and someone to speak for her. But they never asked her what she wanted to say. They celebrated her when she was quiet, dismissed her when she was curious, clapped politely when she followed the script, but panicked when she rewrote it. She never wanted pity, never asked for permission. She just wanted to be seen for who she was, not the version that made others comfortable. And one day, she stopped trying to be understood and started telling the truth. What did she do to break the silence? And how did her voice become impossible to ignore? Stay with us because what Layla said didn't just move a room. It moved the way we think about visibility, voice, and what it truly means to belong. Layla Marie Townsend came into the world in the middle of a snowstorm, 3 weeks early, silent but alert. Her eyes scanned the delivery room like she was already taking notes. She didn't cry much as a baby. She didn't crawl at the right time, didn't babble like the books said she should, but she listened, watched, waited. Her mother, Denise, was the first to notice. Not something wrong, just something different. Layla would line up her toy animals in perfectly even rows. She'd memorize bedtime stories after one reading. She flinched at loud noises and sometimes covered her ears in crowded rooms. Her father, Marcus, wasn't sure what to make of it. He loved his daughter fiercely, but the unknown scared him. He wanted her to have a normal childhood, but Layla never seemed built for normal. By the time she turned 6, they had a word for it: autism spectrum disorder, specifically level 1, with sensory processing sensitivity and speech delays. Denise cried in the car after the diagnosis, not because she was ashamed, but because she worried the world wouldn't understand her daughter the way she did. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he built Layla a sensory-friendly fort in the living room, complete with blackout curtains, soft lights, and walls made of pillows. It became her favorite place in the house. Layla had a little brother, Jonah, 2 years younger. Where Layla was quiet, Jonah was chaos. He didn't understand her rules or routines, but he loved her with that simple, stubborn love only siblings can give. Layla loved the sound of rain on the roof. It calmed her. Every time Jonah screamed or a siren wailed outside, she'd retreat to the laundry room, close the door, and draw clouds. Quiet ones, big ones, ones that never made noise when they passed. He was the first one to sit beside her at lunch when no one else did, the first to translate her needs into words when she couldn't find her own. Kindergarten was a challenge. The classroom lights buzzed too loud, the fire drills terrified her, and the other kids didn't know what to make of the girl who didn't always answer when they spoke. But Layla had a gift. She memorized entire picture books after a single reading. She could hear patterns in the hum of the refrigerator. She noticed when someone was pretending to be kind. She saw patterns, shapes and numbers, colors and music. She once solved a 100-piece puzzle upside down, using only the shapes of the pieces. When the school janitor saw her building a cardboard city from leftover paper towel rolls, he saved them for her every week. "This kid's got blueprints in her brain," he told Ms. Alvarez. But she hated loud bells. She didn't like when people touched her without asking. And sometimes she needed space to breathe. In the classroom, she was either ahead or too sensitive. There was no in between. When other kids ran across the playground, Layla sat beneath the slide. drawn entire cities in her sketch pad, with train systems and sensory gardens, and quiet rooms with stars on the ceilings. Her teachers began to take notice. One day, her first grade teacher, Ms. Alvarez, stayed after class. "I think Layla might be gifted," she told Denise. "She sees the world differently, but maybe that's exactly what we need." They tested her quietly, no pressure. The results were clear: high aptitude in abstract reasoning, advanced visual memory, an unusual talent for recognizing emotional subtext in stories, despite her own difficulty expressing emotion verbally. The school suggested a gifted program. Denise hesitated. She didn't want Layla to be more different than she already felt. But Layla surprised everyone. She said yes. She wanted to be challenged. She wanted to learn. She wanted to be part of something, anything, that didn't see her silence as a flaw. At recess, she started placing her sketch pad on the table for others to see, not speaking, just sharing. Once a girl drew a smiley face in the margin. It was the first time anyone had added to her world instead of just watching it. Still, even in the gifted classroom, she felt like a puzzle piece from a different box. The teachers praised her work. Her parents posted her drawings on the fridge, but most days at school, she sat alone. The kids were kind, but kindness isn't the same as connection. They called her sweet. They called her quiet. They called her special. But no one called her friend. Layla learned to shrink herself, to smile when she didn't want to accept being special as a way to survive school. But inside her, stories were building, ideas were blooming. She wasn't lost, she was waiting for the moment someone would stop speaking for her and finally let her speak. Until one day she decided she'd had enough of being spoken about. It was time to speak for herself. It was the second week of fourth grade. Layla had just turned 9. Her school was holding its annual Voices of the Future assembly, a showcase where students volunteered to speak on stage about anything they cared about. Layla sat in the back row, fidgeting with her shoelaces. The auditorium buzzed with energy, kids whispering, teachers clapping, parents smiling from the audience. She wasn't on the list of speakers. Of course she wasn't. She never raised her hand, never offered more than a whisper unless asked directly. But she listened to every word. The first speaker talked about space, the second about her grandma's tamales, the third about video games helping with math. When it ended, the applause was loud. Layla covered her ears, not because of the noise, because of the ache. She watched her classmates return to their seats, glowing, and something inside her cracked, not loudly, just enough to let the light in. That night at home, she pulled a notebook from under her bed. It was the one she filled with words she didn't speak out loud. Poems, questions, thoughts she was too afraid to say. She flipped to a blank page. At the top, she wrote, "What you don't know about me." Then she filled the page. Her love of clouds and why she always drew spirals. How noises felt like earthquakes in her bones. How special made her feel like she wasn't normal enough to be real. She wrote through the night. She didn't show her mom. She didn't ask permission. The next morning, she walked up to Ms. Alvarez's desk. "I wrote something," she whispered, and placed the paper down. Ms. Alvarez read it 3 times, then looked up, eyes wide, voice soft. "Layla, would you want to share this with the class?" Layla paused. Her throat tightened, but she nodded. She didn't want to be invisible anymore. The following day, Ms. Alvarez made time for a special guest. Layla rolled her sleeves down over her hands. In the hallway before class, she touched the bracelet her mom had given her, a soft band with the word breathe embroidered in blue thread. One breath in, heart pounding, one breath out. She wasn't performing, she was inviting them in. The class turned to look. She walked to the front. Her voice shook, but when she began to read, the room went still. What did she say? And why couldn't anyone look away? The room didn't erupt in applause, not right away. When Layla finished reading, there was only silence, a deep, holden silence, and then a single clap, then another. Then the whole room stood, not out of politeness, but because they felt her. For the first time, Layla didn't feel like a curiosity. She felt like a mirror, reflecting things others hadn't known how to name. After class, a boy named Eli, quiet like her, handed her a note. It read, "I don't like loud noises either. Thank you." That was all it took. Word spread. Ms. Alvarez asked if she'd be willing to share her writing at the school's open mic night. Layla said no, then maybe, then yes. Her second piece was about being in a body that others stared at with confusion and a brain they didn't know was brilliant. Kids started asking her real questions, not just, "What's wrong with you?" but, "How do you write like that? Do you ever feel invisible too?" She started a lunchtime writing club with Ms. Alvarez's help. She called it the Loud Pen, a place for quiet kids to be loud on paper. It wasn't about being brave all the time. It was about being heard even in soft ways. She didn't become the loudest in the room, but she no longer disappeared into corners. At home, her mom cried reading one of her poems about feeling like a project everyone studied but never understood. Her dad framed that poem and hung it in the living room. Even her little brother stopped teasing her about being weird. He started calling her the poet. For the first time, Layla didn't just exist, she belonged. But the more her voice grew, the more she realized not everyone was ready to listen. Some people still wanted her to stay small. So, what would she do when the praise faded? When inclusion felt conditional? And what happens when her biggest challenge isn't silence, but being truly seen? Not every story has a straight line from silence to spotlight. Layla's didn't. After her open mic night, people started treating her like a symbol. "She's so inspiring," they said. "She's so brave. She's such an old soul." But somehow, those words built new walls. She wasn't asked to join group projects, only to read her poetry at assemblies. Kids clapped for her poems, but still forgot to invite her to birthday parties. Even her favorite teacher, Ms. Alvarez, unknowingly slipped into it. "Layla's a voice for all of you," she said once to the class. Layla winced. She didn't want to be a voice for. She wanted to be a friend with, a partner, a teammate, a kid. The tipping point came during a school presentation on diversity. The principal asked Layla to read that beautiful poem about being different. Layla stood at the podium. The mic buzzed. She looked out at her classmates, some whispering, some checking their phones, and she said, "I have a new poem today. It's called 'Don't Clap If You Don't Know Me.'" The room froze. She spoke calmly, clearly, about what it felt like to be called inspiring by kids who never asked her favorite color, about what it meant to be celebrated from a distance, but not invited in close, about wanting to be real, not remarkable. When she finished, there was no clapping, just eyes, listening, seeing. That night, her class started changing. One student, Maya, invited her over to bake cookies. Another, Jonah, asked her to partner on a science project. Slowly, Layla's life became less about being special and more about being known. The triumph wasn't loud, it didn't come with a trophy. It came in a lunchroom seat being saved, in a text that just said, "Wanna hang," in not having to explain herself every time she entered a room. She hadn't just broken the silence, she had taught the world how to listen. Looking back, Layla sometimes wonders which moment mattered more: the night she first spoke her truth, or the quiet days that followed when people finally started speaking to her, not about her. She never wanted to be anyone's inspiration. She just wanted to be included in the group chat, to be someone you sat next to on the bus, not someone you posted about with hashtags and applause. And now, she still writes, still speaks, but these days her voice doesn't echo alone. She's part of a book club, joined the debate team. She laughs more than she's labeled. Because real inclusion isn't a spotlight, it's a seat at the table without having to audition for it. Layla's journey reminds us that visibility without connection is just another kind of isolation, and that the real miracle isn't in being special, it's in being seen, truly, wholly, humanly, by those who care enough to stay, ask, and listen. Layla doesn't know what she'll be yet: a writer, a teacher, an architect of empathy. But she knows one thing: she'll never disappear just to make others comfortable again. If Layla's story moved you, even just a little, don't let it stop here. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded. Being special isn't the goal. Being seen is. In the comments, tell us, have you ever felt like people admired you, but didn't really know you? Your words might help someone else feel less alone. And if stories like Layla's matter to you, stories about courage, quiet strength, and finding your voice in a noisy world, subscribe to Able in every way. Because together, we're not just telling stories, we're building a world where no one has to earn their right to belong.